Maybe I'll do one of those things where you just say two words at the beginning, word to the wise. This is going to be a long one. Just got to be that way. I thought that I'm going to want to criticize some people. I've been holding back and telling a lot of different stories, and I thought as well that I'd better balance what I just published yesterday, which was, as a fellow who goes by the name of Jack out of the Shining character said, a nice presentation. But I was worried about it at the time that I was overcompensating uh, for the pauses and the ums and the ahs that I do when I'm just talking off the cuff. But it is more natural. And I know that some people are telling me, hey, that's really good. That's, very impressive in whatever way. But there's always a danger then. You go too far, even though it was well far from polished and perfect. You go too far and there's something not natural about it then. You're filtering out too much of you. And maybe I'll make a call back to what I was talking about as regards to the translator of a version of Faust by this German fellow called uh, Johann or Wolfgang Johann, or is it Johann Wolfgang Goethe? When anyway, this guy was talking about his need to remove himself from the process so as not to pollute the work with too much of his own style. So when you filter out too much of yourself, when you're trying to, be clever and keep something tight, and neat and focused on a single subject without going on at length or taking little deviations into all these different sidetracks that you think of while you're trying to talk about the one thing you opened the microphone in the first place to talk about. When you do that, you not only nearly forget to finish some sentences, you forget to actually bring in. Sorry, what I was trying to say was when you do that, you don't. Yeah, well, there I go. I gave you an example of it. You may keep it a bit more on track, but you remove too much of yourself. And I'm trying to redress that now. I'm trying to compensate for that. And what I want to do is tell you that, yeah, I've got, in case there's any doubt about it, I've got lots of faults. I don't just talk too long and meander and take too long to actually get somewhere, which I understand can be frustrating. I get frustrated when I hear people fail to get to the point or even delay at all in getting there right away. But what makes it worth listening to is the personality, and the personality is all the faults. If you make something perfect, then it's just clean, cold, clinical. What's to like about it? It has all been said before. The only difference is if you say it in your own voice with the, well, even though this is a real mixed metaphor, warts and all, as Cromwell said, everyone has him down as being a real unlikable fellow. But without knowing anything else about him, if I didn't, you would have to say, well, that's a real redeeming quality. He knew he wasn't perfect, and he wanted people to know it. Not that I'm trying to compare myself favorably to anyone in history who was great for whatever reason, good or bad. I hope you get my point there. So I've got lots of faults, but the ones that I thought about that I wanted to tell you about in this very imperfect, it's not a presentation, but whatever it is, I wanted to tell you how lazy and unmotivated I am. I wanted to say, hey, it doesn't rain but it pours, like, hey, there's two on the back, and I will just upload this. One is just like a presentation. Hey class, look what I can do. Oh, that's good there, Johnny. You can sit down again. Well done. You get an A or something. Why didn't I get an A plus? So I got like 20% wrong. What was wrong about it? Or 15 or whatever an A is supposed to be. Because that's the way I always was. I'd focus on the bad and not the good. Where did I go wrong? Even if I would get 98 wrong, if there was 50 questions, 98%. So I must have got one wrong somewhere. And I'd say, yeah, but how did I get that wrong? And I would probably be, like Lisa out of the class in The Simpsons, I must go up to teacher and say like, but no, I have to argue about how the teacher was wrong, that I got scored unfairly or something. Why is everything so unfair? I wanted to be perfect. And, people would often say that to me in work, don't let don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. If something's nearly perfect, just publish it, get it out there, send an email to everybody, as soon as you hit send, sure, somebody's going to reply and say, you forgot this and you forgot to mention that. And the thing you said there wasn't correct. And then you'd have to recall that email maybe if you felt bad about it, but you can't because somebody's read it already. This kind of thing. So I would maybe be very unproductive because I didn't want to send anything or say anything in case it would be imperfect and I hadn't seen it, and then I'd kick myself for not having seen it, And even if 19 people said to me, oh, wow, that was brilliant, I didn't know that, thanks a million for letting me know, oh, that's really helped me in my work, I'd feel great about that. There'd be a glow inside. But if somebody would then reply to all saying, I think you forgot to, and in some way cross my T's or dot my I's, I'd be putting my knuckles in my teeth and going, oh, no, why didn't I see that, And it's vanity, it's pride, And it's a terrible quality. So I wanted to let you know about that. I'm great at noticing my bad qualities. And I'm unmotivated then in that sense, Everything's just terrible. So why should I even try? Who would deserve, to hear what I've got to say anyway? Because they're all rotten anyway, they're all going to just take it and use it against me somehow or whatever, that kind of way. And I despise that in other people. They're keeping what they know to themselves because it might be of use to them later and they don't want to tip anybody else off, this kind of stuff. I hate those people. So it is true. You always hate what you see in others, those disgusting, mean qualities in yourself, And I lack tenacity. Absolutely. Or tenacity, I wanted to say, You hold on to the city, whatever it is, that thing. Perseverance. You don't stick with it. I was trying to think who said stick with it ability when he couldn't think of some word that meant to keep at what you're doing, be unwavering, have perseverance, and whatever those many other synonyms may be. The best word to say, which I'll only think of later, of course, I'll be kicking myself. Why didn't I think of that word? That means you don't give up when things start getting tough. And I get annoyed so much with one of my brothers because I held his hand for far too long, and anyone I was trying to teach, I would spoon feed them too much and then get annoyed when they'd come to me and say, how do I do this? Or this is too difficult. I won't be able to do this. You're clever, you've been at this for a long time yourself. You know this, but I don't, and I'll never get as good as that. And I would say, I know that you will because I didn't believe I could do it only a few weeks ago or a few months ago or a few years ago, but I can do it now. And not only can I do it now, but it's facile, There's nothing to it. And then I would even forget that it was ever difficult. And I wouldn't curse people for saying, well, maybe I would, but I would get rightly frustrated with people for saying, I'll never be able to do this. This is just too difficult. I'd say, of course you can. And then people themselves, in very short order, maybe weeks later, but certainly after a few months, they would have forgotten that there was ever a time when they didn't know how to do something like that by muscle memory, and that they just took it for granted that they could do it and they knew how to do it and they could do it in their sleep, and they just presumed everyone else knew how to do it then. And if anyone ever said to them, here, how are you doing that? How did you know how to do this? I guess I always knew. And I actually get aggrieved then, and I go, that guy, he should have given me some credit there for letting him know how to do it and for reassuring him, and for encouraging him and telling him that there will come a day where he'll forget that he ever knew it. And he did, and he forgot who told him that. So it's just the way things go, and I've had a rebounding of enthusiasm, and I wanted to just thank people for it, I didn't want to embarrass them either by naming them. But I hate when people say that too, in case there's a public audience and they go, he should have named me anyway. And, somebody did name me, and he just did it in a nice, casual way. His name was, he goes by Southern Nordic. He was saying he was having a nice conversation with me in one of his videos in the comments, and he mentioned it, and there doesn't have to be anything more to it. But I was, how would you say? I can't even think of the word, but I felt very gratified, and it gave me a good feeling. And I know it is somebody else. The reason why I thought I'd better say this, I've gone over the 10 minutes and I wanted to make this tight, but hey, this might be 20. But this is what's going to happen when I just open the mic and be me with pretty much no filter. Actually, I don't think there's any filter. And this is why I'm going to forget my train of thought when I go off on one of these little tangents. But I was watching, I will say his name, if I can think of it. He Restore the Republic is what he goes by. And, he's like what Jesus used to talk about. This fella used to be a criminal. I used to be the worst guy. Isn't it what you always hear about in the Bible, And, he's got a tattoo under his eye that says, well, I don't know what it indicates, really. Maybe it looks like a teardrop, but maybe it's not meant to be that. But, if I would meet some guy in a bar like that, I'd go, listen, well, what would I say to myself? I don't know. But I'd say to myself, I've got to be careful of him in some way, But he's somebody that, from everything he says, he just opens the mic. That he can't be a thief or a liar or whatever, because you couldn't do that on such a regular basis without tripping yourself up, without revealing who you are, And that's what I admire. And there was, plenty of other people. I used to listen to Owen Benjamin a lot more than I do now. And really it is only because he's on, another platform, and that platform just doesn't work well for me, and it annoys me, and what I used to do was download all his podcasts and listen to them when I'd be driving or working, and can't do that anymore, and maybe it takes extra effort, and I'm just lazy, right? And that just brings me back to being lazy. But I will mention now, there's a few other guys, before I forget. I think I did mention Jack there. And so before I forget then, I think the fella that made me find his channel was, I won't say his name because he's got a family, but he has narratives in his channel, and they're bleak, but they're not bleak. I don't know what they are. They're sort of like a Salvador Dali or Picasso version. How would I try to say? So his videos are what either of those guys might be making if they were making videos. You know what I mean? These days, there's a lot. They're very densely packed. There's a lot in it. Sometimes he puts his voice in it. Sometimes he's doing some kind of digital rap with some. I won't describe it too much, but bleak narratives. There you go. And he's a good man, and he has given me some enthusiasm and energy to say to myself, stop feeling sorry for myself, Not everyone in the world is a piece of something. But that reminds me, and I just have to have some faith in somebody, even though, see, I'd like to say everyone's let me down, right? But that's again me. I just remember all the ones that have disappointed me. And I'm not remembering the ones that haven't. And maybe I didn't pay them tribute enough, Maybe they gave up on me, I don't know. But why I mentioned the word there, missing, or while I mentioned the word missing, so I'll just say that, fella I've mentioned in a video before, he's changed his name to The Missing, and I'll leave it at that for now. And this is actually why I opened the mic, to talk about this. This is going to have to go on as long as it goes on. I'm sorry for you. Maybe you can listen to this while you're driving or working, and it won't seem so bad. And hopefully you won't be, dropping whatever it is you're working on and going, get on with it, right? Here we go. I'm getting back on track now. And I got to remember Didier as well. Mention him, I mean to say. It's not that I got to remember him. He's been great for my enthusiasm, and I think I've helped him too. And in case I forget to mention it, sometimes I do think that everything's so obvious it doesn't need to be mentioned. hardly needs to be said. You know, when people say it goes without saying, yeah, it often does, but it shouldn't go without saying, you know. And so yeah, that guy, he's a spray painter, and people might say, you know, what's to it? But there's a lot to it, you know. I know I tried and I can't do it, you know. Um, but anything can be done if you put your mind to it. It sounds so trite, doesn't it? If you stick with it. And I want to mention for me as well. Did I say it already? Like it's the fear of failure. You know, when somebody tells you got a big brain on you there, you know. Well, then you feel like you're under an obligation to not prove them wrong, you know. And you know, I don't know if I'm clever or not. There's a lot of things that I feel like I'm not getting the picture. I'm not getting the message here. You know, it takes me I'm very slow on the uptake a lot of times. You know, and then it's taken me years to realize. Well, actually, there was a lot of people who were just quite happy to accept something on face value, or they didn't want to look stupid. And you know, if they were told, press this button, out comes that, that's good enough for them. But there are other people who did have an insight, something clicked with them, they got it right away, and I was red with embarrassment that I didn't get it right away. Here's me with my big brain, and it's just not clicking with me. Now, I have since discovered that there was, yeah, a hell of a lot of teachers who didn't provide me with the necessary background or prologue to the thing they were trying to tell us. Like it was based on something else, and I knew something was missing. And they just didn't give me that foundation. And there was something obstinate in my brain that wouldn't allow it to click unless that teacher said, look, here's the background to it. Here's why this thing is called this. Here's why we do this. Here's, like, I'm telling you how to do something, but I was going, well, what's the point in it? What's the function? What are we going to use it for? Even though I'm not a utilitarian. All of that annoyed me. I wanted somebody to come in and say, yeah, it's not fair. There. It's not fair, you know? And people would say, oh, well, life isn't fair. And I go, well, somebody better come in and make it fair. And so that's the thing, you know, it's, there's another phrase, and people say, be the change you want to be in the world. You see all these despicable people. I won't use any of their titles because, you can't even just, say what a common word is for them. Otherwise, bang, there's the end of your little diatribe. But that's, again, in who I say is my ideological enemy, or I look at them and I hear them and I see what they're up to, and I just despise them, which is a word that says I really love them, and what I'm despising is a characteristic that is in myself, or it would be. I mean, the potential is there for it, and it's something you can never get rid of. You have to tamp down. When you recognize it in yourself, you have to say, yeah, well, I can't fix that guy, but I might as well get my own house in order. And I suppose that's what I want to try and do, because I want to tell so many stories about people that, well, it's not about the people. It's about the thing that it exemplifies, which is a great way of putting it. And because Jesus said this as well, love the sinner, not the sin. No, yeah, that's it. I got that the right way around, I think, Hate the sinner. No, hate the sin, not the sinner. And then, people get very upset if you might be saying, oh, these are all stories. No, he was real. I mean, yeah, it's important if he lived or not, but like arose by any other name. Was he called Yeshua or Yahushua? Does it really matter? Was he actually really some Roman called, is it Tiberius or something like that? Titus Flavius? I can't remember now. What would it really matter? Because the point is that it doesn't matter who I am or who you are. It's like the Olympic flame. I don't mean to be flattering myself or myself by proxy, ourselves too much. But it's kind of like a torch that must not be allowed to go out. And then people go, oh, he's talking about Lucifer now. These stories are important. There are two pillars to everything. More than two pillars, perhaps, Maybe you need three to support a plane. You can't just have the kind and gentle and supportive God saying, you're great. You're lovely. You're really good. If you stick with it there, son, you can do it. I believe in you, right? I mean, you need the other guy saying, you're just a weakling. You're never going to survive in this world. And I did have a teacher telling me that, maybe you're just not cut out for this. He was a chemistry teacher. I don't want to go any further than that. But I mean, I was good at it, but it was a lot of work for me, and I just felt like I was struggling with it, and everyone else seemed to find it so easy. And, once or twice he'd tell me to stay at the end of the class, and he'd just tell me how there was no point in me going on to college because some people aren't meant to go. Like, they're just not cut out for it. They're not good enough. And I don't know whether that was, just his way of trying to prove him wrong, stick some kernel of something in me, or whether he was just, somebody who liked to make, little boys feel terrible about themselves. But you need the devil there, and maybe he's not such a bad guy. You need him telling you, you're not very good at all, so that you can at least try and be better. Because I mean, if Santa Claus is always giving you everything you ever wanted, well then why do you have to pick yourself up and struggle to achieve anything if it's going to be just handed to you? You see what I mean? So we can't be too afraid of exploring these themes. And these stories, these themes, these ideas, they're what's important. So it's like we're the vessels, and the stories, the ideas, the good things that need to be passed on. It's like the Olympic flame has to be passed on. It's going to go out in whatever torch, so you got to make new torches and carry the flame from one to the other. If I don't stop mixing my metaphors now, right, I'm going to put them out with the water. But it's a vase, it's a vessel, it's a bowl of some kind. You pour the water from one to the next. So does it really matter what the vase was called as long as you decant the water from one to the next when one's getting a bit old and fragile? And I haven't even mentioned, I wrote down a few notes, a few words here, that I wanted to remind myself of to get back on track, and I'm looking at it now, just words all over the page, and I haven't said anything. But I've achieved something if I've sounded natural, normal. And if anybody's thinking, hey, this guy, he's got some brain on him there, or he's some... I mean, thanks very much there, Mr. Narratives, but I do believe you're sincere, but I have to... I mean, here's something I'll say that I wrote down, right? They used to say, like, flattery will get you nowhere. I used to hear people saying that all the time. But it will. I mean, it's a lie. It's like one of those, the customer's always right. Those kind of lies. Because obviously the customer's not always right. The customer's always rude and demanding things that are impossible because they're too stupid to know that it can't be done or whatever. But you want their money, so you just pretend they're right. You placate them. And that's what people are doing a lot of times when they flatter somebody, because flattery is insincere praise, and who wants that? So I don't think he's being insincere, and I would like to know, or like to think that I know the difference between the two, between flattery and genuine praise, and be gracious enough to accept it, where I kind of feel like, well, good, I'll take that. If you're telling me that I made a good difference to your life, I mean, he's telling me that I brought some, I don't know, I won't say happiness, but like something positive into his household. Well, my God, I mean, that alone is something that I would be able to say to myself, hey, if I achieve nothing else, well, because that's what it is. That's perhaps the reason for living, isn't it? So that you can bring a little bit of something positive into somebody else's life, and in turn they can pass that on. And I'll say this word force multiplier, even though it's very militaristic, and there was a military guy in the corporation who got his job because, he was able to say these same phrases, but these things are true regardless of... So I'm not trying to say military people are bad people, but I don't think this guy was sincere, you know what I mean? And he'd always have these happy phrases to belt out, creating more heat than light, or that kind of stuff, and you'd know that he got it from some kind of training manual. You know what I mean? Anyway, to get back on track here, you know, I don't want to reject his praise, but all this incontinence of words, inability to carve a line down through the thoughts that I'm trying to get out here without deviating, forgetting to come back then to where I was. At least it's natural. And so you can see that if you genuinely think half the amazing things he said about me, well, I'm trying to redress that. I want to bring you back from that too far to show you how I'm just I was going to say just a man like any other, but I'll tell you a quick little story. I remember I was in a shop one time and I heard this lady saying to her little kid who was, knocking around my feet somewhere. Well, not my feet. Around my chest, probably, because I'm not a very tall fella. But she said, "Oh, get out of that man's way there. You're in his way." And I thought, "Oh, there's some man somewhere, is there? I better get out of his way." And then I realized she was talking about me, and I thought, "Oh, I'm just a boy." Because in my head, I'm still 16. I was still 16 when I was in my 20s and 30s. And I don't really want to tell you what age I am now. So I guess I'm a man, but I think like we're all realizing, this is it. This is what it is when you grow up. I'm just the same as I ever was. And worse than that, every other idiot and every other vindictive little mean-spirited child, they didn't automatically grow out of it. They just got a bigger body and their desires for everything got worse. And they wheedled their way into all the key positions that I didn't want. I mean, I remember I told a boss of mine probably 20 or so years ago now, around 20 years ago, when he was given a manager job to this idiot who messed everything up. And he said, "Yeah, you did a great interview." I said, "Yeah, but I mean, of course he's going to..." He said he spoke greatly about himself. And I said, "Well, he's going to do that, isn't he?" But you know that everything that comes out of his mouth, when he's telling you what a good worker he is and how he's achieved this, that, and the other, and like, it's not true, because he just messed everything up he touched. He was like the opposite of King Midas, Whatever he touched turned to... trying to think of a polite word for the opposite of gold, turned to rotten wood or whatever. And he said, yeah, I know, but well, it doesn't make any sense then, does it? But of course, I didn't realize then. I was so stupid. It makes perfect sense to make him a manager. They said if you can't teach. No. There are bad teachers, yeah, sure. But if you want to figure out how to do something right, try teaching somebody else how to do it. If you care about the job being done right. That's why apprenticeships works, But anyway, can I get back on track somewhere? So of course he made him a manager. Because it wasn't about whether what he said was true or not. It's whether he sounded good. So good he convinced him, even though he knew what he was saying was lies. See what I mean? Is my point here that I'm trying to say... I'm an idiot who can't stay on track. And while I've been hoping that there came a time in every boy's life where he woke up one morning and said, "I'm a man now," and all those sort of childish qualities of being mean-spirited, you just grow out of them. But you don't. And so that storybook about Lord of the Flies, where there was all these school children stuck on an island, and they were all not just horribly mean, but they devolved into these terrible devil children who did the most awful violence to each other. And they thought they were good for doing it. I said, well, thank God the adults eventually found them. But now we are the adults. And the horror is that that book wasn't about children at all. It was that children get adult bodies and their mentality doesn't grow. I'll I'll leave all that to later. There's more meat in those bones. Good God, I never meant to talk about all this, but yeah, this is gonna have to be one for driving when you got a long journey. Should have said that at the beginning. Maybe I'll maybe I'll do one of those things where you just say two words at the beginning, words of the wise. This is gonna be a long one. Just gotta be that way. Because what I want to get back to is what this fella, the missing, said, and I want to mention how, maybe I helped him. I don't know, but he helped me because he told me that he learned, and I knew this too, but I needed to be reminded of it because it's like an old phrase. But he said, maybe it's a biblical phrase. It's about planting seeds. And maybe he expanded on that by saying that he learned. Again, they're all very simple realizations, but it took him a long time to learn it. That you can't just plant your seeds and then stand over them, shouting, "Come on, grow, grow, goddammit." It's like a watched pot never boils, You can't just plant your seeds and then get frustrated when you don't see any green leaves, let alone shoots and buds and flowers and fruit. It's not going to happen. Not even overnight. Yeah, you have to go away and leave it. And you have to tend to it. But sometimes you're going to plant seeds and you have to be mature enough. I'm going to say I. When I say you, I'm talking about like one has to be. But I hate saying one because, you can say it in French, Oh, God, I was going to try and say something in French, like, on ne veut pas. No. Okay, I'll have to leave that in because I couldn't think of the word. Anyway, where am I with this? I couldn't even finish that thought. But yeah, that's basically it. You got to learn to not stand over it and shout at it and say, "Why aren't you growing? Why can't I see any progress yet?" Because there's some people who had, I suppose, the maturity to say, "I'm never going to see this little fellow here with the potential to do good. He's been gifted these brains of his, but he's never going to do anything with them. He's just going to be lazy. He's just going to be frustrated. He's going to complain about stuff not being fair. His dad's going to tell him, yeah, well, life's not fair, so just do what you got to do." And his mother is going to say, like, "Oh, yeah, it's true. There's an awful lot of people in the world who are in positions of power." And I'd be like, "But why are they? Who let them get there, And then she'll say to me, "Well, you better work hard in school then, You better study hard and do all your exams and show that you can be better than them. Otherwise, they're going to be your boss, And so I'd say, "Well, I don't want to be a boss, I don't want to tell anybody what to do. I want to help people. I want to make things and construct things and find out how things work and show everyone. And then they're going to be really grateful." And they're not, They're going to go, "Oh, give me that," right? And then use it against you. And then I'd say, "Well, what's the point? Why did I even try, Because I certainly don't want to be on top of anyone and then say, "Here, do this. Otherwise, I'll use whatever little minuscule power I've got to make your life a little bit more miserable." I just wanted everyone to like me, and that's never going to happen. And I guess that is really getting to the heart of the faults that I have, wanting people to like me. It's poison to who you are or who you could be. Because you're always chasing after where not just praise, but where the thing that I hate so much when I see it in women and men, just to be equal about it, But it's the virtue signaling, isn't it? Saying what you think people want to hear, and then you sit back when people, roll in with the likes and the praise, and I liked when you said this, and I like, and you're like, yeah. And it mightn't have even been your thought, You have to have the courage to say what you not just think is true, but what you know is true, but what your best way of describing it is at that time. It's going to be an imperfect way of describing it. It always is. This is really turning into a confessional now, and I didn't want it to be. Because it's self-indulgent then, isn't it, as well, Because that's the weakness of confessing your sins, isn't it? Will somebody out there please forgive me, You forgive yourself, you move on, that's it. You don't say, hey, something isn't fair, will somebody come in and fix this for me? Nobody's going to do it. So you have to stop feeling sorry for yourself and you just have to go and do it. But I tell you, what I do really appreciate is to know that there is something good out there. There are some people good out there. And nobody's perfect. Nobody's ever going to be. So people are going to let you down. You're going to feel like maybe you weren't appreciated. You were going to be slighted. But you just have to keep going. Because as pointless as it may all seem, it's not for me to see what the end result of all this is going to be. We flatter ourselves sometimes, I think, to think we're in the end times here. But there's a pattern I've noticed is skies are grey, night falls, it gets cold, but the sun always comes up. Doesn't matter what's in the hearts of men or what isn't. This thing seems to go on and on and on forever. So you just have to invest in the future. Even if you think, not only may it not come around, may it never happen, but like it doesn't deserve to happen somehow because I wasn't satisfied that things weren't perfect. And you see, the moment things are perfect, the moment everything's fixed, then you sit back and you go, so what now then? I mean, it's like, rarely happens to me, but it's like lying in a lounger at the edge of a pool and you're on holidays. There's absolutely nothing to do. You've no book to read. You've got a drink. Or whatever, and then you go, well, what do I do now then? Everything's just fine, nothing needs to be done. You kind of wish you were at home because there was that fence I needed to fix up, or maybe it was something new I wanted to build, or needed to look after that hedge actually, and whatever it might be. Now I think about it, it's going to annoy me. Yeah, that gutter needed to be cleaned before winter set in again. Whatever it might be, you can think of 1,000 examples yourself. Hey, this thing might be an hour, but hope you don't mind. Because I got to finish it off here. Because what I need to actually thank is, in case I'm going to criticize a lot of women in the future, but I'm going to criticize 2 women now. My granny and her daughter. My mother. Had to be careful not to say my mother. But, I wanted to say this as well. Right? I had thought of this thought earlier. And thought of this thought. I can't remember. It was in some film. It was where some wise guys, some mafia guys are abducting this fella. And, he's just figuring maybe he's a private eye. It's just, hazards of the job. And he's trying to take it in his stride as well, And isn't there always like this caricature of these mob guys where there's one guy, he's round and he's heavy set and he's got like eyebrows that are coming over his eyes that he's been punched in the head probably so much because he was a boxer in his youth, and that's why they have him along, because he's a big bruiser. And this fella, like, he says, I don't know, he says something about his mother, and he says, yeah, my mother was a great woman. And he goes, oh really? Yeah, my mother was a woman too. And I just thought, that joke, it was great at the time, because you're like, oh, that guy's so thick, Of course, his mother was a woman. But you see, these days, you can't be so sure. You cannot assume that his mother was a woman, So it is a coincidence now. If my mother was a woman and your mother was a woman, well, then that's something we got in common. Not everyone can say that anymore. So, that mafia guy, he's a big bruiser, but he would have been one of the most well-received and highly respected and venerated people on the old can I get some affirmation over here, gang, you know? So that's what I hated in all the women, you know? Um, and I was thinking about a girl I was going out with. I won't mention her now, you know? She was from a real blue state, you know? And I made the mistake, you know, after we didn't, did I say going out? After we stopped going out, but after we stopped having a relationship, you know? And I made the mistake, you know, you never should do this, you know? And I made the mistake of looking at her social media and she was talking about, you know, exactly the kind of things that you would expect, but worse now and on steroids, you know? I'll mention it now since I brought it up, right? Um, she was like one of these women on social media saying how excited she was about a certain aspect of the thing, you know? And she was very excited to get these, you know, the thing that you gotta wear, right? But you don't have to, but you know what I'm talking about now, right? And she had ordered from some website where you can, you know, like t-shirts, you put your own design on them now, you know? Good God. And she was saying how, you know, she was ordering these ones with superhero comic book characters on it, you know, from the Marvel universe. It just, it made it, I mean, it tore my heart out, but it made me want to retch at the same time, you know, as in vomit, but there's nothing there. You're dry heaving, like, oh God, you know. And I wanted to say, to think I thought I loved this girl, you know, and I did. And then the thing is, I wouldn't care if I didn't still. You know what I mean? Living rent free, as they say. Um, but it disgusted me, and I wanted her to not be that person, and she isn't. I mean, the truth of it is, she's whatever person she needs to be, and in that community, and it's a big community, and it shocked me when I discovered, you know, like the cliches are true, and it's true of a whole. It's a whole, not just a whole city, of a whole state. I mean, sure, you're going to get, you know, a variation in it. I mean, she hated one of her colleagues because I couldn't believe one of her colleagues, like, I mean, literally had the hoop in her nose and the blue hair and Dr. Martin boots in summer because, like, you know, she's just a rebellious girl like that, you know? So she didn't like her, but she didn't not like her because that disgusted her. No, she just saw her as competition, but she was trying a different way to, you know, win the approval of the crowd or whatever, you know, and whatever finances and status that gives you, you know. I mean, somewhere in there, there's the core of her character, but I'll get into it another time if anyone's interested, because you know, it might be easy enough or useful enough, easy enough to figure it out, and useful enough, though, to say what it is that causes all this, you know. And then you have to kind of come around to nobody's really bad, nobody's really despicable. It's the lies everybody wraps themselves up into. Can I get back on track here anyway? Uh, yeah. Well, look, I have lost the train of thought, but it might help to get back on track if I just say, okay, uh, my mother was a woman indeed, you know. Had to look back at my notes there, you know. Mentioned my mom, right? And she wasn't perfect, of course. She had some negative characteristics, and I'll redress that at some other stage, right? But to mention to mention something which I think might have been her greatest quality was that maybe she wanted some people to like her, but she didn't care whether most people liked her, right? So a headstrong woman, which I kind of don't like those, you know, I'm strong, independent, but this is what you mean. This is what independence is: strength and independence. If you don't care whether somebody likes you or not, especially if you don't care if your own son likes you or not, isn't that amazing, right? Because what I see with parenting that's so wrong these days is all the parents are desperate for their children to like them. And then their children immediately pick up on the fact that they have their parents wrapped around their little finger. And then they get whatever they want. And then they turn out to be little monsters. And this has been happening while I was even a kid. And so now we have full adults who are monsters because they always got everything they wanted. And if anyone tries to stand in their way now, well, you need to be crushed, you know? This is what they're at. They've never had anybody tell them no. So I'll have to say this now, like, as it was, as it is, to pay some homage to her, right? As in, like, honor your ancestors, because I think there is something about talking about them, when they're dead. You are honoring their memory, and I'm not trying to be, maudlin or, well, you understand that I'm not, right? She'd want me to be finally picking myself up by my own bootstraps instead of saying, hey, mom, look at me, I'm doing great. And it is like that thing, diving off the dive board. You're going, oh, look, mom, I can dive off this 20-foot board, and look how well I can dive. Mom, look, and you're shouting across the pool. Everyone probably does this, and then she looks away, she's talking to somebody, and then you come up out of the pool and you see her when you're actually flying down through the air, and you notice her looking away, and you go, hey, mom, you missed it. But it's actually great now to look at in hindsight. It's great that she wasn't worrying about me. She knew I was fully capable of not, breaking my neck or doing whatever, missing the pool. As one of these kids who get everything, and they're wrapped up in cotton wool. And everything they do, like, they go to the toilet and, out they come and they get rapturous applause. So I would tell her, like, when something wasn't fair, when I got blamed for something that I often didn't do it, but I got blamed for it. Like, if my brothers did something, I'd say, well, see, you didn't do anything with them, and I got locked him, or not locked in my room, but sent to my room for probably 24 hours. When I did the same thing, yeah, but you're different. And I go, how am I different? Equal justice under the law is what I wanted, yeah, but they don't know any better. Or whatever. I go, of course they do, they only learned it from you. And I'd say, well, that's not right. Where did I learn it from then? I must have learned it from you. And she'd go, well, now you're being cheeky. So I go, I hate you. And then she'd say, good. I go, what? And I'd be really aggrieved that didn't work, because she was able to do emotional manipulation to me. Because that's what I cared what she thought about me, Hey, mom, look what I can do. Oh, that's brilliant. I wanted her praise, you see. I wanted her to like me. I wanted her to clap, 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 and give me all the praise, instead of standing on my own 2 feet and saying, I'm going to do this because I want to do it, because it needs to be done. That's all there is to it. Instead, I'll admit this, right? I put out a video, and then I am hoping, like, I hope they like it. I hope it's not going to make a fool of me. I hope I'm not just advertising to the world, to whoever's listening, what an idiot I am. Because I have these principles in me as well, that says, if you put it up there, it's forever. You can't take it down again. That's even more embarrassing if you would do that. You can't take it back. You can't recall that email and then have some people going, I got the notification to say he wants to recall it. I'm going to read this one. That's going to be good. You know what I mean? But no, I mean, really the principle is, if you say something, you said it. If you do something, you did it. If you make your bed, you lie in it. You got to suffer the consequences of your actions. And if you say something, if you believe it's true, you got to stand behind it. So there's a lot of things I appreciate about my mother, and in retrospect, in hindsight, I really appreciate that about her. I think that I did say that more or less to her, before she died, that everything she did for me, there was a good intention behind it. Most of it, some of it you get wrong, but there was an underlying good motivation. And I did tell her on more than one occasion that I was very grateful for the way that she brought me up, I did. I just about lost it there. Just about had a crack in my voice. I still do now. But there you are, right? So that's... that is the natural me, So there you are, warts and all, with the tremble in the voice. they're nearly crying because I don't know, he's feeling a bit sorry for himself. I guess that's what it must be. So now that this one it's gotta go up, No way I gotta edit any of this. Cannot take out that bit of silence, that pause where I had to collect myself, And I'm still trying to collect myself. And if I was too much to handle, if I was getting too insubordinate, it's not rebellious, it's insubordinate, will not be under the thumb. So that was me as a child. Why would I take it now, So when I was being too disrespectful, hate you, you can't tell me what I gotta do. Who are you? If I didn't learn anything bad from you, if you tell me I just learned it from myself, then it's not fair. You're not being fair. You can hear the kid in me crying now, can't you? Well, it's gotta go up. But I never wanted this to be a confessional, but there you go, hey? If anyone wants to laugh at this, I don't think he will. If he ever wants to laugh, if there is someone who would laugh at this, it would say more about you than me. I would be sent to my granny mum, as I called her, as they called her, I think, as well. Because I would say mom, but they would say mum. And I thought she was a nasty old woman, No sweets for me, nothing nice, never anything nice to eat in the house. If you want an apple, you can eat an apple, and that's it. I go, who wants an apple? My other granny gives me chocolate or sweeties, and she go, oh yeah, well, you're not getting any of that stuff here. I mean, and then I'd say to my dad and my mom, she's really mean to me, and she'd make me do chores all the time as well. Yeah. And my mom would say, well, that's good enough for you then, isn't it? Brilliant, isn't it? See, it's the devil you need to keep you on the right path. You know what I mean? And so it's obvious, but it needs to be said. Because when people start saying like, ooh, what he's saying there now is sounding very Luciferian, when he's talking about bringing the light. That's what the devil did, didn't he? Whether you call him Beelzebub or Lucifer or Baal or Moloch, or he's pointing up and he's pointing down and he's doing all this. Right, so there is the evil character. But people start going, oh no, this pastor told me he's going to try and tell us good is bad and dark is light. You need both. You need the contrast to see one from the other. People will go that far. But if you start saying, no, you have to go one further. You have to start saying, the devil has a purpose, a very good purpose, right? Because it can't be like, I can't stand those people who only do good because they'll be punished if they don't. They're only sticking to the straight and narrow because they know what's going to happen to them if they don't. They'll be severely punished. You see what happens when you remove punishment from a society. The devil hid himself and he said, do what you like then, And I imagine him proving to God, you see these people that you claim to love, look what they do. When they don't think you exist, when they think you're just a myth, a fairy tale character. And then God says, all right, then I'm not going to interfere for 6,000 years. Do what you like with these people. And we'll settle a bet at the end of it. If you're right, yeah, $1 will buy the earth and you can have it forever. But if I'm right, if you don't collect that dollar, you don't get to buy it. You see how it works? If there's one man left standing, you don't get it. And that's why you gotta keep going. I can't believe I'm crying through this. But it's a way of describing the final truth. That when all the chips are counted at the end of the day of reckoning, is there anything left in that tally? And if the books don't balance, the devil, can he buy it? You see? Don't know why I tried to act all Scottish there. I'm not Scottish, you know? But that's how they would say it if they were trying to compose themselves. Can he buy it? Because he's a penny short. So that's why there has to be a good man standing. Not saying it's going to be me, but I'm saying someone's got to do it, and you got to continue that journey, pass on the flame, and light the torch of the next generation. And you need people like my mean old granny, who knew what was up, by the way, but she never told me, because I guess she figured this kid, he's a little bit touched in the head, you know. Maybe he gets that from his father. And I will say this because it's funny, you know. I was always just trying to dismantle stuff. Like, you should be watching TV, but, like, you know, stuff to while away her retirement, which she was probably entitled to. Snooker and that kind of thing, you know. And I was bored with snooker. There was never anything good on telly whenever she was watching, you know, because I wasn't into snooker then. And I'd be dismantling something or, you know, opening something up to see how it worked. You know, she had a wireless radio and we'd taken that apart and seeing how it worked and tried to plug a DC motor into the wall socket. And as I was about to do that, she just yelled down, "Whatever you're doing, stop it!" And I just thought, how does she know what I'm doing? I mean, she literally has eyes everywhere. She's the devil. And she never lived to see me laughing at her antics, but I do in retrospect. So she planted a lot of good seeds there, you know. But I thought they were bad, you know. So I will have to get a lot of the people who want to take the Bible religiously. And it's funny, isn't it? Because, you know, you take it religiously when you take somebody else's meaning. A pastor tells you it meant this, you know. A pastor said there would be sophists who came around and tried to convince you that up is down and black is white and good is bad, you know. No, you gotta take the mix for yourself. Use your own discernment. You know that too. You can't be afraid of hearing people's words. You got to have confidence in your own God-given ability to use your kind of sharpened knife that you can whittle away for yourself and say, what's really going on here? Doesn't matter that I explain to you my little version of it. I mean, I actually got that sense of it from reading a pamphlet that I could have just rejected from, you know, one of those Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm pretty sure it was anyway. It says, here, take this leaflet. And instead of saying, get lost, would you? I says, yeah, all right, like, I'll have a read of it. Why not? Why shouldn't I entertain somebody else's idea, at least for a while? See what they have to say. Instead of just assuming that whatever they got to say is worthless because somebody else told me it would be. So it was of some worth. And, you know, that's it. They didn't get to see the seed they planted take root and flourish in me. And I passed it on a little bit to some of you who might be listening now, you know. And I felt it was important to keep that little, you know, whimpering and inability to stop the voice trembling and the throat closing up there, you know, to sound like a little girl. But I realized a long time ago that strength is showing your vulnerabilities. And if you put your vulnerabilities on the table and somebody wants to come along and put their heel in it or stab it or mock you for them, I mean, you know what they're doing is mocking themselves. Well, no, they're not mocking themselves, but They're attacking what they know is inside them. They're trying to make out that they're invulnerable, and that exposes their weakness. So I better wrap it up now. And as I am saying this, I know I've planted a few in a little box, that I made. Well, it's about as big as a. I was going to say something like, I'll say it. It's about as big as a coffin, but no, a deep coffin, a raised bed, that kind of thing. And so I planted a few veggies, carrots, onions, cabbage, and I tell you what, they're going to taste like the nicest cabbage and carrots I ever had. If I make a casserole or some kind of stew out of some meat and those onions and whatever else I can chop into it, it's just going to be the best thing in the world, But I mean, what's even better than that is the idea that there may be something flourishing in the future out of a few words I said into a microphone, one day. And I'm not trying to flatter myself, but all these great men that you kind of go, oh, Sam Adams said this, and good God, Thomas Paine, I nearly forgot his name, The Age of Reason. And if you ever read that book, it's so easy to read, and I wouldn't have read it if it wasn't for a Google Books that I could read it through, So out of bad can come good, And everything he says in it is so, God, I won't say, everything is so obvious in it, but he just puts it real plain, He doesn't feel the need to say, look how clever I am, and use all these multisyllabic words, He just puts it in plain English, plain English for the 1700s, I suppose, or, late 18th century. Or could it have been early 19th? But anyway. I can't remember. And I'm going to make a fool of myself now. That's it. I'm definitely going to roll back and say, I wish I could correct that. But there you are. Just as an example, you don't have to read it. You get the gist if you flick through it. It's so simple. And that's it. If you really want to tell anybody something, try and tell them in the simplest way possible. And in all the language changes that have happened since, he kept it, understandable by anyone. Because that's the thing, with sometimes then, you look back and you say, like, the founding fathers were this, that, and the other. They had these labels, whatever. But you got to ask yourself, is what he's saying true? Is there truth in it? Or he was bad because he blah, 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 Everyone's bad. Everyone's good. Hey, I was going to wrap this up, I thought, eh? But there you are, the seeds that you plant. If you're fairly lucky, you might get to make a stew out of some of them. But if you're even luckier, you might just get to comfort yourself with the thought that somebody somewhere might be repeating some of the same words in their own voice and taking some solace from them, some comfort, and some drive from them to give themselves some determination to say, yeah, I could complain that the world ain't fair, but somebody else recognized that too. And they said, yeah, you're absolutely right. It isn't fair. It's full of all these weak-minded people who I despise for their weaknesses. Even that Jordan fella, who seems to be an almighty zealot, but he did say a lot of good things. And that cleaning your room, putting your own house in order. It was just a different way of saying putting your own house in order. Which again is biblical, If you want to complain about somebody else, you better make sure that, whatever's behind you, whatever you're trying to hide isn't so shameful, So pull out the old plank in your eye before you talk about the splinter in somebody else's, And I do feel at this stage, yeah, there's a lot of things. So, but the focus shouldn't be on complaining about these people. Look at all these people. Look at how despicable they are. It should be about not defining yourself by your enemies, but saying, here's what I stand for. Here's how I can put it in the most simplistic terms, because I want people to understand. Because that's got to be the point. Not about, look at the big brain on me. Look at all these big words I might know. But about what am I trying to achieve here? If I'm looking for some purpose, some meaning to my life, well, that's far too egocentric. It should be about laying down your life for others who you're never going to even see. They'll certainly never be around to say, hey, thanks for that. And you're never going to get an apology from all these. Can't think of I'm trying to think of bigger words now, only because you can't say all those small words that they have detectors for. And I think these people actually, a good lot of them, they appreciate if you can insult somebody cleverly, So if you can say all these people who I haven't met, but I'm sure some of them might have some redeeming qualities. If you can say, none of them are going to ever say, yeah, do you know what? I've seen the error of my ways. You were right. And I was just too afraid of what might happen if I would admit that I had done wrong, That's it, You have to assume you're never going to get an apology. You have to assume you're never going to get thanks for anything. And you just got to say, yeah, I'll do it anyway. So many people said that to me. Yeah, we'll just get on with it. But just get on with it wasn't enough for me. And I suppose what I just did there was, I was going to say, yeah, fine, I'll say it. Elucidate, expand on, extrapolate on the origin point, and touched on a few other things in a very imperfect way. But I'm getting the sense now that I managed to round it off and make a point there. So I'll shut this off. Thanks very much for listening. Much love. And I hope we'll talk again in the future.